learning. So maybe it's quadruple loop learning. I don't know. We're just keep going because it's such a rich, important topic to cover in the XScale set of patterns, frameworks, and things. And that's because triple loop learning is really kind of the heart of it all. If you remember in our past videos, we were talking about triple loop learning being improving the workflow within the team, improving the information flow within the team and across teams and across the organization, really. And finally, improving the flow of value that the team or the team of teams is delivering to the organization, and ultimately the customers. In this segment, we're going to expand on triple loop learning by examining the Camelot model. Now, if you remember, we introduced Camelot with a case study. So it was an experience that I had at a client site, and we compared and contrasted scrums, and various scaling frameworks with my experience at this client. And Glenn, I don't know if, before I get too far into I don't want to go through the whole thing again. What would you say in a nutshell you'd like to share with the audience about what we covered last week?
We've introduced the notion of learning flows, and that I think is where traditional Agile can use some improvement. There's a lot of concurrent activity, but in terms of sharing learning across teams and across streams, that's an opportunity, and frankly, an opportunity that Camelot addresses head on, along with anything else that needs to be shared across teams and streams. So I think this is a powerful, deep, although somewhat subtle concept. And I think looking at the video, as we're talking about doing, is a good plan. There's a lot of juice there, and we can hopefully add some value by providing some commentary.
So what we thought we'd do today is share Peter Merrill's video live. Well, not live, but his video has been recorded, of course, but we'll play it and we'll provide our inimitable commentary on his video and maybe add some color and some of our experience in how this could be used with your Agile teams. If you were to do this, if you were to implement all of or parts of the Camelot model, what would that look like for your team or your team of teams? So does that sound like a good place to start, Glenn?
I think so. And Pete's presenting it in a very general way. And we'll talk about how, for example, what happens if you have more teams than Pete's scenario of 3 teams and 3 streams, along with some other comments and caveats and things to watch out for.
Okay, so we'll do a watch party. That's what those things are called. I just remembered. All right, so let me share my screen. And so you should all be able to see my screen. Glenn, can you see the screen? So this is the opening slide from his video, which I believe I included a link to in the last episode. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this.
This actually illustrates what we just mentioned a moment ago. The innermost circles are the teams. In this example, there are 3 teams. They are part of a stream. That's the second circle. There are 3 identical streams, each with 3 teams, all of them wrapped in a portfolio, and that's the big outer circle.
How would you define a stream, Glenn?
A series of teams working together to deliver value for the business. So
it's something that they're building together, and that it needs more than one team to do. So if you were a traditional organization, we just have more people. So you have a 50-person team or a group of people working to deliver something. And we know that doesn't work. A 50-person team is very inefficient. And so what we do in Agile organizations is break them up into small teams. And in this case, we've got 18 people, 6-person per team in a stream. Now, does it have to be just 3 teams in a stream?
No, and that's an excellent point. In fact, this is Pete's model, three streams of 3 teams. You, in fact, could have more teams. The guidance is not to make the teams too big. When they get too big, split them. Better to have 2 teams working together in a stream than to have one huge team. In terms of the limits on the number of teams per stream, what would you say there, Kumar? How far can you scale that comfortably in your?
Well, again, borrowing from Dunbar, I forget his first name, the Dunbar number.
Robin Dunbar.
Yes, I think the what he would say is the maximum number of people that can work together is around 60.
Right.
And I know that the Scale Agile framework says it's more like 120, 140. And there are some exceptions where Dunbar says that is acceptable, but in terms of people working together on something, 60 is sort of the upper limit, and that's a multiple of 3. And so in the Camelot model, that's why you see teams of 6 and streams of 18 and portfolios of 18 times 3, whatever that is, 50 some people, 54 people or so.
That's a good
Again, it's less than 60.
That's a great point. Sorry, I was just going to say that's a great point. But remember, not all teams necessarily have 6 people on them.
That's right. Not all teams have 6 people. We alluded to this last episode, where some teams can go up to 10 people. So what do you do about that, right? And we're going to examine the model, of course. Actually, maybe I will play this without sound, because then we can actually talk about it as we're watching the video that Peter narrates. Mm-hmm. So if it is only 54 people in the stream, but you actually have more than that, you have more teams or you have more people in each team, that is okay. It's fine to start with more, knowing that this is an ideal case. This is the ideal case that you'd want, in small teams organized in streams of 3 in a portfolio that is all delivering something of value.
To your point, I see it as perfectly reasonable to go up to 4 or 5, maybe even 6 teams. But when you start pushing 6 teams in a stream, well, maybe you should split the stream. Yeah. The guideline always is do what makes sense. If you're 55 or 60, split the portfolio. That would seem to be a bit strong. In terms of when would you split the portfolio, if you're starting to get into 100, 110, that's sort of time where you would want to look at that. But the key point here is that you can scale the teams a bit and the number of streams a bit as well.
There is a reason why Dunbar says 60 is sort of the upper limit, and that is that communication starts to break down when the number of people within a tribe or a group of people working together on something important gets beyond that number. And so it's an important thing to keep in mind, even though there's flexibility in the system, whether you're doing Scale Agile or something else. An Agile release train that is 150 people is not a good idea. I can't stress that enough.
We mentioned this in a previous episode. Steve Jobs on the Macintosh team was fastidious about this. If they had 100 people on the team, if you needed to bring in 101st, no problem, but somebody had to go.
That's an interesting point. All right, I'm going to play this a little bit and see what comes next. So as Peter's narrating this, of course, I have the volume off. He's really just talking about this business agility life cycle. So this is about descaling, where Scrum at scale, Nexus, Scaled Agile Framework, almost Scrums, it's all about scaling, where XSCALE takes another approach. It's about how do we descale? How do we make our teams as self-organizing and self-deterministic, if you will, as possible, right, where they can make their own decisions.
The key point, autonomy, but also aligned to the objective and the mission. So
right.
It's not that people are running around doing whatever they want. They are autonomous, but at the same time aligned to the objective and working efficiently and effectively.
I would say that it's in reverse order. You need that alignment so that the teams can be more autonomous.
Yes.
You know, it's hard to give people autonomy if they go off and do something that's not in alignment with the goals, right? The team, of the stream, of the portfolio. And so autonomy is something that is easier to achieve when people are all pointed in the same direction and know what to do to achieve that goal.
That's an excellent point. First, do alignment.
There are so many ways for teams to self-organize. One of the most important things is alignment, and then you can have them organize around the goals of the team and goals of the stream and so on. Now, you know, in Scrum, that Scrum team, obviously they do number one. They deliver. They collaborate on business outcomes. If it's a high-performing Scrum team, they're going to work with the product owner, and they're going to deliver something at the end of their sprint or their iteration. And certainly all teams at the end of the iteration, they have a retro to review what they did and how they can improve it. So that doesn't change in Camelot. You still have those ceremonies, some sort of a planning cycle that leads to delivery, a retrospective on how the team did. So what is two? What's this team circle thing, Glenn?
That's what's new here. Team circle is where all of the folks in a role get together and look at earnings and make proposals on how they can improve doing their role. That is taken back to the retrospective. One way to think about this, and we've mentioned this earlier as well, is it's like a community of practice, except it is something that is built into the process. And the ideas and thoughts that the team circle or the community of practice comes up with is actually brought back to the teams in a formal way. With the community of practice, it's more informal.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So number two, remember number two as the team circles, and we're still on one here. And one, the team is delivering on some outcomes. And as Peter likes to say, they could be hamburgers, they could be lawsuits. Doesn't matter what the outcome is. It's whatever the purpose that team was put together to deliver. That's what's important. And so the two, which is coming up is, and let me just go ahead and play the video, is the team, the roles on the team. This is a cross-functional team. Unlike our example from last episode where we talked about component teams. So a component team is where it's mostly one type of role that's all working together. Now, on a cross-functional team, you have this notion of a team circle. This is a Camelot model thing. And so each role comes together once a cycle. And to Glenn, to your point, this is something that could be, we talked about this last episode, could be fulfilled by a community of practice. However, the results of those are mediocre at best.
And Peter's also brought up an important point in that although Agile has traditionally been applied in software, it absolutely can be applied anywhere. These are generic principles and generic practices on how people can work together more efficiently and more effectively.
So what do these people talk about in these team circles?
They talk about ways that they can improve their particular job function. They would consult with other people from other teams and perhaps get some insights or some ideas that other teams have found. And of course, they're very interested in because they're performing the same role. They might come up with a plan to go and standardize this. There might be some back and forth. Hey, you did that. That's better. Well, what about doing this instead? Hey, that's even better. So there's a sharing of ideas from people who are doing the same thing, the same role, done in a formal way, adding to the retrospective. So it's not just something you do casually. This is actually part of the process under the Camelot model.
And this really manifests, if you will, learning flow between teams, learning between teams.
Exactly.
You know, what are testers on one team doing that testers on another team maybe not doing, and they can learn from? Or analysts on one team helping analysts on another team figure something out. Also, it leads to insights that these people can take back to their teams. To your point, the very next ceremony is the retrospective. They have all these ideas now. They've met with their peers on other teams, and they've brainstormed ways to improve their role, their function, how they work, and they're going to bring it back to their teams. That is powerful.
Exactly, and frankly, something that many teams miss.
Now let's see what happens next. So now they're exiting their team circle. So now the treaties are what's proposed by the circle. So if I'm a tester, I might say, you know, this is how we should be doing testing. They may bring it back to their team and propose that idea in the team retro. And this is where flow is improved. The tester might say, hey, if we did it this way, this other team's doing it, and they've improved their throughput by X%. Now that's a proposal that helps the team improve their workflow in some manner. So we have learning flow, and here in the retrospective, they're improving how they work. They're improving their productivity in a big way. So this is the workflow manifestation of the triple loop learning. So we got two of the learning flows covered in a short segment of this video. So let's keep going and see what else happens. These run much the same way as regular retrospectives, except you have a rich set of information and data that the teams are pulling from all their roles, all the roles that they just came back from their circle meetings. And so they are now feeding the team with all their great ideas.
There is one important point here. And that is the notion of there's no coercion or there's no force. Circles will come up with ideas, but they bring them to the team, merely has proposals, and the team can accept or modify or reject them, but they can't be imposed. And we'll see more of it as we continue.
This is how self-organization works, right? As a member of the team, I go off to my circle, I collaborate with my peers, I learn from them, they learn from me, I bring back ideas to the team, I propose something, it may or may not be modified, accepted, become an action for the retrospective, but this is self-organization at its core.
Yep.
People are doing things because they want to, and they're getting knowledge from it, they're sharing knowledge with it.
And there's another benefit here in that we're showing respect for people doing the work. Let's talk about testers for just a moment. Testers may feel, I'm just making this up, that they're not perhaps given proper respect by the developers. But now they can get together and have a series of peers. Their view is valued and respected, and just like all of the other roles, and it's brought back to the team at the same time as all of the other roles bring back their work to the team. But everything is on a level playing field, and everybody is treated with respect and given an opportunity to present ways to improve their particular role.
That's safety, self-organizations. You need a lot of psychological safety for self-organization to work and work well. Teams are organizing around the work and organizing around the great ideas that are coming back. So how can small teams collaborate to self-manage a business stream? So if you remember the first slide on the video that talked about the inner circle and 3 small circles inside of a bigger circle, that's a stream. The stream is some business-focused entity, and the teams are helping deliver value to that business-focused entity. And so how can they collaborate to self-manage this stream? And that's the next step in this video. And so you covered those first 3, the team delivery, the team circles, the team retrospectives. We've got learning flow in the circle, we've got workflow in the retro. And now this next part, it's maybe a little confusing. Would you say, Glenn?
This video gets complicated quickly, but you and I are going to try and address that by pausing it and elaborating. But yes, we've covered off the team. And I think if you have just 3 teams and that's it, this would be good enough. Go forth and implement it. But we're now going to introduce a more complicated situation where we introduce coordination between the teams.
The coordination between teams occurs in these councils. And the people that make up the councils are who? Where do these people come from?
They come from the teams. We're not talking about special people that only exist on the stream level. The people that are from the teams are just like they participate in the quality circles, they also participate in the various stream activities.
And so while the quality circles are going on, members of the teams are huddling, meeting with their counterparts. Is that when the councils are also happening?
No, they happen
after.
It happened after. Now, here's actually an optimization. The way Peter has laid this out, all 3 of those stream activities are happening in parallel. You can certainly do that, but a simpler way to do that Pete has actually endorsed is to go and have one council doing all 3 of those activities. There's some back-end activities. We're talking integration, and deployment. There's some front-end activities. We're talking prioritization and perhaps clarification. And plus, there's going to be some negotiation on the proposals from the team circles that might apply to all the teams. So there's a number of activities going on, but it is a simplification to just have one group of folks doing all 3 of them.
So this is another ceremony that's added, and this actually allows our value flow, doesn't it? This is where the stream council, which again made up of team members from the stream, are prioritizing, are integrating the work that they just completed. Part of the council is doing that integration work. Part of the council is doing some prioritization work. Isn't that where this happens, Glenn?
It does. It is. That's exactly where it happens.
Right. And so if you think about Scrum, the planning activities happens before the team goes off and delivers. And in a way, this is the same thing. We're doing some planning we're doing some integration, and we're ratifying and accepting some of the proposals that are coming from different teams that are part of the stream.
Exactly.
Right. And then the teams go off and into their retrospective. So now think about all that power of information, all that learning flow that's occurred, not only for the things that can be improved from a role context, not only from, and I wouldn't say not only, but also from the proposals that people are making in terms of prioritization. What should we work on next? How can we integrate this most effectively and efficiently?
There is an important point that we need to emphasize, and that is, even though you have these stream councils, they are, again, just considering the proposals from the teams, from the team circles, but they are not imposing anything on the teams. They may modify the proposals and the proposals rather, from the team circles to make them more applicable across streams, but they are not going to oppose them. They are still brought back to the team in the retro, and the team, they are not forced. The team is free to accept, modify, or reject. Yeah,
and in our last episode, we talked about this council, the stream council. In our case, in the client's case, it was a council meeting that was made up of representatives of each of those component teams, and they came together in this council meeting and they discussed component team specific proposals on how things could be improved. And the council was made up of more than this number of people, because there were more teams than just 3. There were 6 teams, or 5 or 6 teams, plus the leadership team. And so there was representation in this engagement that I was involved with from all of those groups. So it was a bigger council meeting, but still worked in the same manner, where you had members of the team coming together to discuss, to prioritize, to ratify, to take back to the teams the proposals.
Now there's an important point here to mention, and that is around the rotation. Not everybody on the team attends the stream ceremony. The practice, but it follows a very strict rotational model, so everybody gets a turn. There's a couple of caveats. 2 people from each team go to the stream events, so that you have continuity from the team, so that the newest person from the last iteration goes, so there's some continuity, and the oldest person who has not attended goes as well. So you have an old and a new from each teams. There's a second caveat in that all roles are represented at the stream events. So you need to, this isn't that hard to do in a calendar, but you need to set up a rotation so that everybody gets a turn and all roles are represented.
We did that at the client side. It was not hard to do at all. They set it up and they followed it, and they made modifications when people are on vacation and whatnot. It's not hard to do, to your point. Now, we're going to talk real quick about these stream integration. You see the roles that are outside of this circle and the stream circles. Now, the integration work is the people that are not in the stream council that can work on integration activities. So they can integrate their code. They can test the integrated package that's going to be released in that cycle of activity, and so on and so forth. The stream circle is there to communicate with other streams, to do the same thing, right? To share information with other streams that are part of the portfolio. So this is a fractal that can work on multiple levels.
Absolutely.
And so this is another example of learning flow, maybe not value flow necessarily. It could be if they're talking prioritizing between streams, but certainly about learning flow, because the stream circle is representations from one stream meeting with representatives from other streams, and they're talking about things that are relevant.
It's really any concern that the stream has. So learning, optimization, refactoring, you name it. These are stream level activities, but they're done in a more formal way. It's kind of like the scrum of scrums that some folks have, but again, done more formally and with an intense focus on everybody being represented there, not just the scrum masters, for example.
And so as this video plays, you can see some of Peter's Comments. The stream council. Learning is made explicit when the team circle propose new and changed features and treaties. They prioritize features for team delivery and redefine what the team's going to work on. And this video continues. We are probably going to stop here in a minute. I think we've done our job to describe the three flows in the Camelot model. Would you say that, or do you think we've missed anything?
I think this is actually a good break point. Our video is actually a bit long. There's a lot of substance in what we've covered so far. So this does feel like a natural break point to me.
This is a good slide just to talk about how streams communicate. Just much like the team circles where the roles get together, the analysts get together, the testers get together, and so on and so forth. So too do stream circles. They work the same way. It's just between the streams that are part of a portfolio.
With each of these circles with each of these circles representing a different stream.
Correct, exactly. And so they're now sharing information. And they're sharing information about new or changed missions, Peter calls it. You can call it epics. You know, if you're in a scale Agile shop, it's epic feature story. So here at the portfolio level, we're talking epics, big things. And so it's really sharing information, sharing learning, and propose changes to priority. So this is a very important meeting, and it's done every 2 weeks or however long the cycle is, the iteration is.
But in terms of practices, Pete's calling them treaties here. These are not imposed. They may create them, but they're again brought back to the team, and the team can accept, reject, or modify them. Anything
to add to this video, Glenn, that I may have missed?
Nothing that I can think of. This is really emphasizing. I think everybody knows about autonomy. But this is how we implement alignment. So even though the council can come up with obviously they have to decide on epics, but in terms of practice improvements, that comes back to the team. And but everybody is first aligned, but as you said, also autonomous.
Yeah, it's really a wonderful pattern. It is complicated. Once you get going, people really enjoy it. At least that's my experience with it at the client site that tried this out. They enjoyed it. It felt to me that they had never been as empowered as they were in that period of time. Right, to be able to not only to make decisions, because that's part of it, there's also just the knowledge that they were able to gain from their counterparts on other teams, the knowledge they were able to share, decisions that they were able to make as a team. Because before it was really just the managers making all the decisions, and all of a sudden the team members are being involved in these activities.
And you mentioned it, but I think it's worth mentioning again. This isn't about eliminating all the managers. I think at some of these higher level meetings, particularly at the stream level, it would make sense to have a manager attend on a permanent basis, perhaps depending on the nature of the work. This isn't about throwing away an existing model. This is just a way for the teams to work together more effectively.
Yes, and I think for our next video, we're going to probably need to cover leadership as a service. I know we've done a couple of videos, not you and I, Glenn, but I've done some with my other colleagues and with Peter as well. But I think it's worth talking about because this Camelot model, it relies on leadership as a service being applied at various different council meetings and stream meetings and things like that.
Yep.
So we should probably talk about that next.
Yes, I think that's actually an excellent idea. Leadership as service is a powerful concept, and there's actually a little exercise that we might be able to do as well.
Awesome. Well, this was a longer video, but the Camelot model is a worthwhile investment of time. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope this explanation simplifies it a little bit. Yeah, Peter's video is very good. I just thought that you and I, Glenn, could sort of take it apart, tease it apart, add our commentary to it for the benefit of our viewers. So thank you for that.
I hope people find this useful.
Yep. All right. See you all next time. Bye-bye.